5,097, so that's a very high number. Partial losses of 5,390 for a total unplanned loss of 14,487. The total unavailable megawatts, therefore, is in the order of 19,417. At the moment, we have 5,883 megawatts at risk because we are operating with known defects that may cause the units to trip. So the risk remains high. The system is unreliable and unpredictable. And again, this is why we are currently in load shedding stage 4. The demand forecast for peak this evening is at 31,980. The capacity that we estimate to have available, excluding the 2,140 megawatts that we have available from open cycle gas turbines, is 27,013 megawatts. So again, we have a shortfall in generation capacity. We have to maintain a reserve margin, and as a consequence, we unfortunately again have to impose load shedding. The outlook for load shedding for the current week is that for today we will continue until midnight with stage 4 load shedding. We will then drop 2 stages to go to stage 2 from midnight to 5 o'clock, and we will then again on Tuesday have stage 4 load shedding from 5 till midnight. The same pattern for Wednesday and for Thursday, and by Friday we hope to move to stage 2 load shedding from midnight to 5 o'clock, and then stage 3 from 5 in the morning till midnight. And then if all our units return as planned, we intend to then lift load shedding for the weekend to stage 2 around the clock. This is, of course, not the news that you want to hear. You want to have an end to load shedding far sooner. Unfortunately, due to the unlawful strike, we have suffered significant backlogs and maintenance. We've also had to operate the plants under conditions which are less than ideal, and we therefore will take a number of weeks to fully recover from the strike. I can, however, give you the assurance that our colleagues are working extraordinarily hard to recover from the after effects of the strike. On Sunday, we returned Letabo Unit 4, Kendal Unit 5, and Kusile 1. Those units are ramping up, particularly Kusile 1. It's a big unit. It can produce about 720 megawatts, but it's not yet running at full capacity. We are slowly ramping that up. For today, we've already seen Kriel 3, Medupi 5, and Ingrina 7 return as planned. So that's very positive. Medupi 6 and Arnott 4 are anticipated to return for evening peak. And throughout the course of the week, we intend to have a further 12 units return to service by Thursday of this week. So you can clearly see that we are doing our best to return as much stability as we can to the system. Of course, this does not guarantee that the units that are currently online will continue to operate. They are susceptible to trips and failures, and that is why we do require the additional 4 to 6 gigawatts of capacity that we have been asking for some time now. We are in a good state as far as our emergency reserves are concerned. The team did a great job over the weekend of recovering those. We are sitting at 86% in our diesel tanks at Ankerlig, 100% at Gerikwa, and our dams are essentially full with only a couple of pumping hours remaining in order to bring them to full capacity. So from a reserves position, we are looking much stronger than we did during the course of last week. One of the major plants that will make a big contribution to improving the availability of capacity on the grid is the return to service of Koeberg Unit 2. Our Chief Operating Officer, Jan Oerolser, will give further color on that and also make some further announcements on developments at Koeberg. But at this stage, the 920 megawatt that we can expect from Koeberg 2 is scheduled to come back onto the grid by the end of this month. That will play a major role in bringing enhanced stability to the grid. With regard to further capacity additions, at Eskom, we are resolved to do everything in our power not to stand in the way of adding new capacity to the grid by whatever means possible. We have therefore, as you are aware, made available land in Mpumalanga. We were very pleased with the results of the first round, and we received offers for 1,800 megawatts on 18 parcels of land, taking advantage of the registration relaxation for plants less than 100 megawatts. So all of those units will come in at less than 100 megawatts. This is all renewable energy. And we will make available a further 2,000 hectares of land for similar leases by August. And we anticipate that this will add about another 220 megawatts. We have identified further parcels of land with existing grid access that we will be making available to the tune of some 30,000 hectares. So this is quite a large extent of land spread throughout a number of provinces. So not only focused on Mpumalanga, but also in the Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, Free State. And these will be released in phases. We are currently targeting quarterly releases in order to allow for IPPs to get themselves in gear to make those bids as and when they fall due. We anticipate that this will rapidly accelerate the addition of more generation capacity to the grid, and we are quite pleased at this opportunity that has been identified. I may also add that from a grid access perspective, we've been working very hard to streamline our grid access protocols, and we have halved the time for us to afford grid access from an initial 210 days to 105 days, from the first cost estimate letter to acceptance of the budget quote. This, I think, is a very good achievement. We are not resting on our laurels. We want to further improve and streamline that process, but I want to particularly recognize our colleagues who are doing really good work on removing any further obstacles to adding generation capacity by being as flexible as possible. Of course, this new generation capacity will not come online as quickly as we would like to, but we anticipate that over the coming 18 to 24 months, we will see substantial new capacity additions based on the results of our land lease program, as well as bid window 5, bid window 6, and other interventions that are under the control of the IPP office, operating under the auspices of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. The outlook, therefore, for load shedding is that there is light at the end of the tunnel, but we do appeal to South Africans to continue to conserve electricity. I have received many reports of streetlights being on during the daytime, office buildings with all lights burning at night. I can't imagine for a moment that we have so many hard-working office workers throughout South Africa that all of the office lights need to be on all of the time. And we appeal to all energy users to conserve electricity, particularly during the peak hours of 5 in the afternoon until 10 o'clock at night. We fully appreciate that it is cold, that people wish to make use of heaters, but we really do request your support to ensure that your electricity-hungry appliances such as geysers, swimming pool pumps, and so forth, do not operate during these peak periods. If all 60 million South Africans make a contribution, we will really see a difference on the grid. And of course, the sooner that we can bring our peak demand down, the sooner we can relieve the impact of load shedding. So everybody's support in this regard will be highly appreciated. I thank you for your continued patience and understanding. We really are doing everything that we can to try and resolve this electricity crisis as soon as we can. This is, of course, not only an Eskom effort, it is also dependent on the support of various government and regulatory authorities. We are in discussions with all of those departments, and we are seeing a renewed sense of urgency to address whatever obstacles there may be to resolving this crisis. Thank you very much, Sikonati. I will now hand over to our Chief Operating Officer, Jan Oberholzer, to give us more detail and an update on developments at Koeberg.
Thank you, Andre. Good morning to all connected. After the initial recovery late last week, we have had an increase, unfortunately, in the stage of load shedding. And that, unfortunately, was due to a lack of, again, generation capacity to meet the demand of the country. Now, we can basically categorize it into three. Number one being generators that were limping during the strike. Those generators have now been taken off to attend to failures and defects. Then secondly, we had generator failures, notably boiler tube leaks. And then thirdly, generators that have been delayed in returning to service. The GCE briefly spoke about the illegal action, but there were 6 stations that were directly impacted, partial or in full, during the industrial action period. Those being Duva, Arnold, Matla, Hendrina, Camden, and Letabo. Now, the loss in capacity was as a result of the industrial action due to no routine maintenance being performed, lack of time years breakdown repairs, lack of maintenance and operating personnel, as well as a lack of unit controllers to maintain normal functioning of the power station. Now, the lack of operating and maintenance staff during the strike period resulted in inadequate, say, dusting, ashing, and the performance of key routine maintenance. Now, Matla and Duva specifically will require time to recover on ash backlogs by taking additional load losses, unfortunately, for some time, as well as may require additional outages to repair mills, precipitators, etc. So those 2 power stations, we really do have some challenges. Now, in addition, reliability at these power stations is further compromised while catching up with routine maintenance. Now, the lack of routine maintenance and delays in planned or forced outage scope execution has impacted on 8 of these units, being Arnold 5 and 1, Camden 4, Hendrina 2, 5 and 6, and then Letabo 5 and Matla 1. Now, these units will not return as per their planned outage durations and will require extensions, which further impacts on the available capacity. Now, in addition, as just has been stated by the Group Chief Exec, Koeberg Unit 2 has been further delayed and is now expected, as stated, by the end of the month. Now, I personally spent the whole day with the Koeberg team on Friday last week, and I can confirm that there is total commitment from the team to return this unit safely as soon as possible. We had some delays, and one of the unexpected delays have been the polar crane. But fortunately, we've dealt with that now, and the activities are progressing. So we are working very hard to return that unit before the end of July this year, and that will add a sustainable 920 megawatts to the system, and basically one stage of load shedding that we're talking about. Now, we currently have 4 generators out of service due to boiler tube leaks, being Majuba 1, Medupi 6, Camden 6, as well as Arnold 6. Now, these units are all expected back during this week. Now, as the GCS also stated, since the 3rd of July, we had 13 generators shut down that we had because of defects and failures. Now, some of these units will return over the next few days and obviously contribute to additional capacity. Now, we have managed to recover, as the GCS said, our emergencies, being, the dams, the pump storage, as well as our diesel levels. However, we will be using, these emergencies during the week when it's required, and then during night when, the demand is lower, we will make use of the opportunity to fill in the dams, to top up the dams, as well as to top up, the diesel tanks. Now, the system is being monitored very closely, and as soon as the situation allows, we will most definitely ensure that the load shedding stage is reduced. And obviously, the intention is for, in about 10 days or so, that we trust by then we'll be in a position, to lift load shedding. However, the risk remains because of the unpredictability and unreliability of the system that we are running. Now, I would like to make use of this opportunity to also inform the public of certain leadership changes in the nuclear operating unit. Now, after 27 years in service of Eskom, Ridwan Bakadin, our Chief Nuclear Officer, will be departing from Eskom by the end of July to join a Canadian nuclear utility in an executive position. Now, Ridwan, we wish you well and all the best, and thank you for your contribution. Now, Keith Featherstone, a long-standing nuclear executive with over 30 years of nuclear experience, as well as a previous Koeberg Power Station manager, will be acting in the Chief Nuclear Officer role. Then the World Association of Nuclear Operators, WANO, in Atlanta in the United States, has selected the current acting Koeberg Power Station General Manager, Nomawethu Mtwebana, to join as a reverse loanee for the next year, whereafter she will then bring this learning experience back to Koeberg. Now, Mahesh Valatham, a very long-standing senior manager with over 27 years of nuclear power plant experience, will be filling the role at Koeberg Power Station as a general manager in an acting position. Now, I wish to assure the public of South Africa that Eskom has a sufficiently experienced and competent executive team to continue ensuring a safe and smooth operation at Africa's only nuclear power station. Now, Eskom, we intend to fill both the Koeberg Power Station General Manager as well as the Chief Nuclear Officer positions as soon as possible. I'd like now to ask Rulani Matabula, the current acting Group Executive for Generation, to take us through some more detail on the generation system. So, thank you, Rulani.
Thanks, Jan, and good morning to all the members on the team. Jan, I believe that yourself, together with Andre, has covered a lot of detail in terms of what is currently happening. There's still a lot of work that we are doing on our side as generation to improve availability and reliability of our plant. There is still a lot of backlog, obviously, that were created by non-maintenance on our generators during a strike period that we are still dealing with. A lot of work has been done already within the week that employees had been back at work, and we have returned a number of machines. And as Andre indicated, we still have got many machines that we still have to bring on load. However, the system remains constrained. We still find ourselves having to keep generators on load with defects as we create opportunities where we are able to shut down these machines and deal with known defects and return them on load. And as Andre indicated, we still have a lot of megawatts that are currently at risk. And every day there's more risks that we find ourselves having to deal with. However, with the progress that we have made thus far, since the employees have been at work, I'm confident that we should be able to see a greater increase in our energy availability throughout this week that can lead us to reducing and minimizing the stages of load shedding in this week going forward. So thanks, Jan, and over back to you, Sekonati.
Thank you, colleagues, for that update. I'm now going to read the questions that have been posed, and I'm going again to request members of the media to ask all their questions during this session, and we will distribute this recording as soon as we possibly can after the end of this meeting. There will be no opportunities for one-on-ones, colleagues. So let me begin. Terence Creamer comes from Engineering News. Andre, this is a question for you. Has Eskom been consulted ahead of President Ramaphosa's load shedding announcement? What was Eskom's message to the President? Andre, Director.
Thank you, Terence. We have been engaged with various ministers as well as the President from time to time over the weekend. Numerous meetings have taken place at official level with representatives, DGs from various departments, as well as representatives from the presidency. So there has been a lot of activity over the weekend. Lots of plans have been considered. I don't want to make any announcements in this regard. I think the president's message speaks for itself. So to answer your question, we are very much involved in the discussions. And our inputs are being taken into account, and we are working in a very close and collaborative fashion with all the role players in government to try and accelerate our solutions that we have to bring on more capacity to the grid as soon as we can, in keeping with what the President has said in his message to the nation earlier today. Thanks, Sekonati.
Chris Yeland says it feels like the stage 2 to stage 4 Eskom load shedding that was previously experienced intermittently in 2021 and the first half of 2022 has morphed into a more permanent and continuous part of our lives. Is this the case for the foreseeable future? Andre?
Chris, I think the answer to that is that we need more capacity on the grid, which is what I personally have been saying for the past 2.5 years. If we have 4 to 6 gigawatts more capacity on the grid, then we are able to minimize load shedding and also create the headroom for Relani and his team to carry out the much needed maintenance on units that are at risk, but also to do the planned maintenance, which we are still catching up on. The energy availability factor, as you know, has been declining over a number of years, and that trend is very difficult to reverse if we do not have the headroom to carry out the maintenance. And therefore, the answer to load shedding, again, we keep on circling back to the same response, is seeing how we as South Africa can add more capacity to the grid sooner rather than later, and that's exactly what the discussions have been focusing on that I referred to earlier. So the risk of load shedding will remain until there is more capacity available to the grid. Thanks, Ikonati.
Thank you, Andre. The next question comes from Antoinette Sabet of Rapport. This is for you, Sekhumoto Skepas. To which countries is Eskom exporting electricity, and how has this been affected during the current period of load shedding?
Thank you, Sekonati, and good morning. As we speak, we have imports and exports. We import primarily from Mozambique, but we also export to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Swaziland, Lesotho, Namibia, and Botswana. The protocol around what we do during load shedding depends on the nature of the contract. There are contracts that we term as firm, in which case we basically apply the same protocols to load shedding, and those countries' demand is then reduced proportionately to what they are importing from South Africa. There are contracts that are termed unfirm, which are largely day ahead, and those we cancel altogether in the event that we have load shedding. Over the course of this period, we've also had an incident where one of the towers on the lines from Kaurabasa collapsed, and we had to reduce the imports while that tower was being attended to. That has been fixed, and we are now receiving the full output of Kaurabasa. That is the status, Sekonati. I think if I can just add on the financial side, because this question also comes up, most of the customers are up to date. We only have some small backlog from Mozambique, which we are attending to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sekhumoto. Are you able to confirm the tower collapse you spoke about that reduced capacity from Mozambique happened within the Mozambican territory? Am I correct?
Yes, you are quite correct, Sekonati. The tower was in Mozambique, and our Mozambican colleagues managed to restore it. Took a bit longer than we thought, but it is now well in hand. Thank you.
I thank you, sir. Mariam Issa from EE Business Intelligence asks, when do you expect South Africa to start receiving some of the COP26 funds, and which projects would you hope to see them used for initially? Is Eskom intending to present a plan to government with input from stakeholders on how to address the deepening power crisis? Do you think it should be described as a national emergency? Is it possible to increase maintenance to address the power supply shortfall, as some are recommending? Would this help to significantly close the gap? Andre, please answer those questions, and where possible, Ian can assist. Thank you.
Thanks, Mariam. We are in very close discussion with Mr. Daniel Manele, working in the presidency on the South African response to the COP26 funding to the tune of $8.5 billion US. We are looking at options to accelerate the availability of initial tranches. We are making very good progress in that regard. I'm not at liberty to disclose the timing or the amount. This is still subject to agreement with the lenders. I didn't want to compromise the negotiations by letting the cat out of the bag earlier, but I think everybody is highly motivated to ensure that we can get this on the road sooner rather than later. Our initial focus will be on transmission projects in order to increase grid access, and in particular unlocking the Northern Cape. So that's going to be a key focus area. We are also looking at additional transformer capacity in Mpumalanga to again allow renewable energy to be connected to the grid where we have existing transmission capacity. So those projects have been put together. The comprehensive project pipeline has been made available and shared with Daniel Manelli and his team, and we are now in discussions to see how we can best implement it. But suffice it to say that the spirit of cooperation is very much alive. We meet regularly with Daniel and his team, and there's full alignment on what we want to achieve. So I'm quite positive that we will see some announcements in the near future. Of course, this is not entirely within Eskom's control. We have been developing a number of plans to address the power crisis in South Africa. It is indeed something that is extremely serious. We cannot have continued load shedding to the extent that we've seen over the past week, and also forecasting for the current week. So it is clear that we cannot continue on the same road. South Africa has been subject to load shedding since 2008, and to some extent, I think we as South Africans have become used to this new normal. This, of course, is not how it should be. The lack of electricity security is acting as a serious brake on economic growth and on the creation of further jobs. So we do need to resolve this very urgently. We have given our inputs to government, and government, I'm pleased to say, is giving serious consideration. We've also consulted with a number of stakeholders, energy experts, both local and international, and those inputs have been accommodated in the proposals that we have made to government on a number of areas which we believe could accelerate the relief of the generation capacity crunch. If I can head off the follow-up question, I'm not at liberty to disclose the nature of those because those are under consideration by various policy departments, and they may require changes to regulation. So proper public consultation processes have to be followed, and it would be inappropriate in a forum such as this to start that process without the relevant ministries and departments being involved in the process and in fact leading the process. So I'm not going to elaborate more on that. Where it comes to increasing maintenance, there is a narrative that if we take structural load shedding for a short period of time, then we can very quickly catch up on maintenance and do the work that is required. The truth of the matter is that these outages are quite large projects in and of their own right. They take about 24 months to prepare, the ordering of long lead items, the planning of contracts, resources, the availability of spares, and also the sequencing of these on the national grid. Once the required stage of outage readiness has been achieved, it typically takes between 90 to sometimes 180 days for these outages to be carried out. And this therefore gives you an indication of the extent to which we are behind in our maintenance program. If we have to take out all of the units requiring all of the backlog maintenance, I don't think it will be an appropriate solution to the problem. We have already increased our maintenance significantly, and we are currently running at very high percentages when it comes to the trend that we've been able to achieve historically. But I'm very aware of the fact that we will have this backlog until such time as we get the additional generation capacity that I have referred to earlier. Thanks, Ikanati. Sikanati, you can take over, or are you connected?
I've just made the best speech while I was muted. Thank you. Jaco Verveld, he has not identified himself, wants to know if there would be any legal action against the workers whose illegal strike expedited the higher stages of load shedding last week. Andre?
Thanks, Sikanati. So there are two processes that we will follow. The first one is an internal disciplinary process. We are not going to merely accept that workers were able to go on an unlawful and illegal strike and engage in acts of intimidation. So there will be internal processes that we will follow. No commitments have been given to organized labor in this regard. There are also external legal processes, in particular criminal charges to be laid. We have video recordings of a number of incidents where we will be cooperating with the South African police to make sure that we can lay the charges. Of course, we are not able to carry out arrests ourselves. We can't prosecute. And once we have laid those charges, we'll ensure that they are properly followed up. We were also greatly heartened by announcements by both the National Commissioner of Police, General Masemola, as well as by the President, that a task force has been established to address the ongoing scourge of crime and corruption, as well as sabotage in Eskom, which has been having a very serious negative impact on plant performance. So, Jaco, to give you the assurance, yes, we are going to take action against the illegal strikers. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. The next question comes from Ogutle Hlati. I presume that's Hlati from the Cape Argus. Please give an update from January to date, how many days the country has experienced load shedding. Isabel Fick, are you on the line, please?
I am. Good morning, everybody, and we have experienced up to date 73 days of load shedding since the 1st of January this year. Thank you.
And that includes today?
Yes, that includes today.
Thank you. Chris Yeland again wants to know, please can the CEO advise whether the Eskom board has approved in principle to sign power purchase agreements with the car powership IPPs, whether Eskom intends to sign these PPAs, and or under what preconditions will Eskom sign these power purchase agreements, such as obtaining indemnity from any liability arising from signing the PPAs. And he says, please clarify, is Unit 2 of Quebec being synchronized to grid end July with the full power 2 weeks later? Andre?
Right, Chris, I don't think it's quite appropriate for us to negotiate through the media, and certainly not to reveal or make announcements on the board's stance when final decisions haven't been taken. The status quo with regard to Eskom's position vis-a-vis the car powership's contract has not changed, and we remain in negotiations with the IPP office with a view to resolving the outstanding legal matters, and in particular our request for an indemnity having regard to the ongoing litigation and potential legal risks surrounding the powership's contract. So that is the latest state of play. Nothing has changed. So I'm not in a position to add anything further. Can I ask Jan to respond to the Coburg Unit 2 question, please?
Good. Thank you, Andre. Chris, yes, you are spot on. The intention is, and the plan is to synchronize on load Unit 2 before the end of July, as we've said. And then typically it takes a ramp-up period of up to 10 days, not 2 weeks, but up to 10 days to get to full capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Mariam Isa of EE Business Intelligence has a question again for you, Jan. Given the delays to replacing the steam generators and doing routine work on Kubek Unit 2, are you confident that Unit 1 will be ready when its current operating license expires in July 2024?
Thank you, Sikonati. Miriam, yeah, it has been unfortunately, the last 2 years that we had to postpone the replacement of the steam generators. Now, the day that I spent on Friday at Kubek, we had quite an in-depth discussion on the readiness to implement the steam generators at unit number 1 during the next outage. We refer to it as outage 126. Now, do we have some risks? Yes, we do. Are we going to replace it? Yes, we have to replace it. And currently, for early December, we are planning to open the breaker for Unit 1, then to continue with the outage as well as the replacement of the steam generators. So we have to do it, and then also to then continue with the steam generator replacement on Unit number 2, which will take place in the middle towards the end of next year. So these 2 replacements need to take place successfully in order for Kubek to obtain the license to continue operations for another 20 years. Thank you.
Jan, do not go as yet. Thank you. Carol Payton of News 24 is on Kubek still. It does seem that the entire Kubek refurbishment has been seriously bungled and in total will now take 2 years rather than 1. Are you confident that the interventions you have put in place now are going to solve these problems? Jan?
Thank you, Sikonati. Carol, yes, it's been very unfortunately that we had the delays in the replacements, as I've just said now to Mariam as well. Is it going to take 2 years longer? Unfortunately, it's taking 2 years longer than when we planned it. But it will still take place in the allocated spots and time that we have allocated now. As I said, at the end of the year, we will open the breaker for unit number 1, and then towards the end of next year, then for unit number 2. So it has unfortunately created a situation that we are cramping what needs to happen for the long-term operation of Kubek, right till the end. And that means that the risk obviously has increased. Now, what have we done? We have now bolstered up, the project team. We are bolstering up the outage team. We have just been successful on Friday between the CNO and myself. No, it was actually Thursday evening between the CNO and myself to secure, a very experienced ex-colleague of Kubek to join us. That will be involved and focused on the outage. We're also employing some help from international companies that has done these steam generator replacements before. We also will be sending some of our colleagues to visit these power stations where these replacements are taking place and have been taking place, to make sure that we put everything and that we have everything in place to make sure that we do have a successful steam generator replacement project that will happen now, as I said, unit 1 firstly, and then unit number 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. The next question comes from Hammond, who has not identified himself. Please share some insights in how load shedding schedules are carried out. Is it manual with people driving around to switch on and off, or is it automated? Sekhumoto or Isabel, can you help us with that question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Sikonati. There are different arrangements that are in place. In terms of the Eskom supply areas, Eskom operates through its control centers to effect load shedding. There are some municipalities that have requested assistance, and Eskom conducts the load shedding on their behalf from our control centers. In terms of some of the large municipalities and metros, most of them have their own control centers and have the capability to effect the load shedding remotely, although there are instances where people have to actually drive to specific substations to do the switching. So it's not common across the country. There are instances where people physically have to drive, but I think in the main, these things are dealt with from control centers at Eskom distribution, municipal or metro control centers. Thank you.
Thank you, Sekhumoto. Okuhle is back on Quebec 2, on Quebec. Eskom says it's expecting to return Unit 2 of the Quebec nuclear station month end now. There were concerns that the replacement of the 3 steam generators on the unit had not been done. Has this contributed to a further delay, which is now month end July? Is Eskom confident this will be done by month end if it's not done yet? Jan, please confirm that you are not replacing the steam generators on this unit this month.
Yes, I can confirm that we are definitely not replacing the steam generators in the current outage of unit number 2. That will only be done on unit number 2 towards the middle, towards end next year. We intend to do the steam generator replacement for unit 1 starting the end of the year, currently planned for the beginning of December. So then also what is important to understand that we had unit number 2, the outage was quite a long outage. So it was maintenance, it was refueling and certain repairs that we had to do. But part of that, what we initially planned was a steam generator replacement. So it's not to say that because we've taken out the steam generator replacement that the outage should have been done quicker. It is not the case at all. So we were unfortunately not ready to replace these steam generators, but it did not affect negatively, the program as such. We had other challenges that we had to deal with that unfortunately delayed the return to service as we had planned it, towards the end of June. So unfortunately, because of all these other challenges, we now experience a delay. What also contributed to the delay, the 30 days delay, is that because we did not replace the steam generators, we had to make 100% sure that they are fit for purpose for another cycle. And that took us up to 30 days to make 100% sure to do and conduct all the tests and make 100% sure that we can safely utilize it for another cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Rulani, please deal with this question from Vali Padayachi. As you're getting the 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts in the next 2 years, is Eskom generation comfortable that it can, in this period, achieve the plus minus 70% EAF to obviate and then move to EAF of about 80% to get to a level of normalcy? Are we also able to get closer to Eskom generation 32% thermal efficiency and a new one, improvement in the generation heat rate? Sincere apologies for being too specific, but these are important metrics in this crisis situation, says Vali. Rulani?
Sekonati, I will start with answering the last item on the efficiency. Valley knows that in winter is actually the time where our efficiency is at the highest. However, this winter has been different. We had a lot of machines that were not performing accordingly. And as you know, when we go into the summer months, due to the effect of ambient conditions on our plant, it tends to make our efficiency to be low. By end of June or by end of May, the June report was indicating that our efficiency is sitting at 30.6. Our target for the year end was 31.79. which I believe we should be close enough to that, given the amount of work that we are doing on our plants to improve the efficiency. So that is the one part. In terms of the energy availability, it is our intent to ensure that we gain back much of the megawatts that is currently locked on breakdowns, to ensure that our efficiency, our energy availability improves. As you would know, that our energy availability has been at the lowest when we ended the last year. It's still at the lowest at the moment. We believe that soon we should be able to work closer to 70%. But to get to 80%, I think it will require a lot of work and a lot of capital that needs to be invested in our plants, doing midlife refurbishments and all sorts to be able to see our EAF increasing. It is our intent that we continue to deal with the risks that we're currently experiencing, implement reliability maintenance to ensure that the performance of each of our generators that we take out for maintenance, it comes back to perform. A lot of work on optimizing the newly commissioned units at Kusile that we still need to do, and that as well has got its own time delay and impact on the system. We believe that we will continue to focus on marginal gains, putting megawatts sustainably back in the system to ensure that our EAF improves. We're forecasting that in the next 3 years or so, we should be operating around 70% and continue to improve it from there. The main issue obviously remains that at the moment we are constrained. So our recovery process, it's very slow due to the fact that we are unable to obviously extend our shutdown duration for outages to carry out the complete scopes that are needed, more especially at some of our plants that are currently beyond the midlife refurbishments, which will start requiring bigger outages to be able to implement those projects. And I'm making use of an example of Matimba, Letabo, Majuba, which will be doing their CNI upgrades. It requires longer duration on outages, and that also has an impact on our EAF. So between the next 3 years, we intend to be implementing these projects to ensure that the machines that will be running obviously beyond 2025 and beyond 2035, we ensure that they are reliable. So the amount of work that we need to do will require that we take longer outages, and that has an impact on how much EAF do we have on year on year. So hence our improvement from where we are to go beyond 70 will take some time, as we need to create space to do these midlife refurbishments on the example of the 3 station that I just mentioned. Thanks, Sikonat.
Rulani, thank you. Do not go, please. Vali has a follow-up for you. Is Eskom's generation repowering strategy in sync, supporting and talking to the said 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts that is urgently required on the grid in the next 2 years, not forgetting synchronous power in addition to inverter power?
Yes, Sikonati. In our repowering and repurposing program and our clean energy projects that we're doing, there is a lot of megawatts that we obviously expect to gain. However, many of those projects will start taking shape in terms of putting megawatts on the grid 2 years from now. I believe, obviously, you would know that many of these technologies that we are obviously considering, wind, solar, to be in comparison with base load, we normally would require twice the size So we will participate and contribute some megawatts on this 4,000 to 6,000 in the coming years. However, I believe that there is a lot that still needs to be done to make sure that we put more megawatts on the grid through renewable technology. And yes, we are also considering the synchronous condensers as part of our technologies at the stations that are shutting down, the stations that are going through the repowering and repurposing program. Thanks, Sukunati.
I thank you, Rulani. The last question for the day comes from Clyde Melanson, and it is for Isabel Fick to respond to. Would it be possible for smaller local municipalities in good standing on their Eskom accounts to migrate from scheduled load shedding to offering Eskom demand response ancillary services, similar to some energy-intensive users? These services would then replace the requirement of participating municipalities to shed the load. Isabel, please.
Thank you, Sukunati. Indeed, DR is something that we do use quite a bit. However, it only applies for about 2 hours in a day. Whereas load shedding schedules are for much longer periods than that. So if municipalities were to deliver DR services to us, and we were to then say, no, you will not be load shed, it means that that burden of the amount that they would have load shed will then go on to other customers. So in that regard, it does not make a lot of sense. However, from an ancillary services perspective, I am pretty sure that there's a lot of ancillary services that we can be talking about, not just in terms of DR, but also others. So of course, we're open to discussion. Anything that can help at this stage for the grid is fine, but to do that as an offset for load shedding, it is not going to assist the overall picture. What it will do is it will put a greater burden on some of the other municipalities. Thank you, Sukunati.
Thank you, Isabel, and thank you to all colleagues for helping with this media briefing. Just a few housekeeping rules before I ask our moderator to close. We have just, the statement on the leadership changes at Quebec is just about to go out, and you do not need any voice note for that. Jan has spoken to it. And secondly, please again use this recording for your media requirements during the day. We will then make contact with an update tomorrow on the load shedding situation. Not much has changed and will change. Andre, Director, please, can you give us your closing remarks?
Thank you, Sukunati. Thanks, everybody, for being on this call this morning. Again, I can give you the assurance that we at Eskom are working as hard as we can in order to not only address the short-term issues, but also work on the longer-term issues. And we are really trying our best to bring a speedy end to load shedding as quickly as we can. There are significant challenges, as you heard on this briefing today. Again, we appeal to the cooperation and support of all South Africans to help us to conserve electricity, particularly during those critical peak hours. Every light, every plug that you switch off really makes a difference. So let's pull together and make that happen for the sake of all. Thank you very much. This ends this media briefing.